Hey guys, and we're back with another episode of Building with You Live, the show where we sit down with folks from DTC brands and build a branded chatbot with them live. I'm your host Sean, and today I'll be doing both the interviewing as well as the building. Ben, it's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks, Sean. Pleasure to be here.
So, Ben's the head of growth over at Hey Skincare, Australia's number one hemp skincare brand, which is a fascinating angle to me because I've rarely seen skincare brands built around this angle. Hey has also been featured in publications like Buzzfeed, Marie Claire, as well as Daily Mail, and they even have a crazy 90-day money-back guarantee, which shows how much they stand behind their products. Ben, would you be able to tell us a little bit about how you started, as well as what the day in the life of the head of growth over at Hey looks like?
Absolutely, Sean. Yeah, Heybud was started 3 years ago. It's been a company that's scaled directly through D2C and has only recently come into retail, into one of Australia's largest pharmacies, which has been a massive moment for the brand over the last 6 months or so. We have uh, basically acquired customers that are suffering from skin concerns, whether that be acne, dry skin, oily skin, primarily in that 30 to 40 age bracket. Lots of young mums, lots of people that are going through maybe post-pregnancy concerns. So it's been a really interesting environment, and obviously a super fast-paced environment as skincare and beauty in general really is. And then from a growth marketing perspective, I've been at the company for a year and a half now, and I've done basically any sort of role that we need to do. The team is quite small. We have a team of around eight and growing. And when I first came in, it was quite a bit smaller than that. And so I think the primary focus for me at this moment in time is creative strategy. And it's really ensuring that our primary mode of acquisition, which at this moment in time is still Facebook and Meta, that's obviously performing well. And obviously the ROAS is very strong. So a lot of my time is spent on creative. And then I'm also in charge of CRO and website design, UX, and copywriting for those processes. And so those are a few of my sort of daily tasks. Affiliate programs and organic channels is another thing that I'm sort of exploring with the team, and we continue to work on at this moment in time. But I would say my main KPIs at this moment in time are ROAS, and then obviously CRO being a huge one, ensuring that not only is a conversion rate really strong, but the AOV is really strong, and it leads to a great lifetime value. So we're always thinking about the different funnels that our customers are coming through.
Yeah, it's actually interesting that you bring up creative so much because once you scale to a certain size, I think you're actually churning through your creatives pretty damn quickly. Do you have a standard process for creating these creatives? Like, do you have a standard structure or framework that you guys follow?
We do. We have a graphic designer in-house that makes things a lot more possible, and then we work with a couple of remote video editors that have fantastic skill. We have frameworks that we use internally, but a lot of it is creative. A lot of it is like creative bound. So I would say brainstorming sessions are a key part of our discovery. And then I would also say that customer calls are very central to the way that we come up with creative angles. Customer calls are probably the highest ROI activity that I do on a weekly basis. And from those customer calls, we can often generate creative angles, and some of those creative angles have led to ads that are still generating positive returns from us that we set up 6 months ago.
It's interesting. So you hop onto a call with customers and you ask them about product.
We asked them about their journey in skincare. This is just obviously one of the modes of generating angles, but I think it's always been interesting. You do hear emotional angles, emotional investments, and at the end of the day, we make purchases based off emotion much more than we do logic. So there's a lot of stories of impassioned, primarily women in our case, who have gone through almost a traumatic period with their skin from time to time, and the challenges of not finding a product that works, and whether that be going through supermarkets or going through dermatologists or taking different acne medication, prescribed medication, and all of these different things they might be spending hundreds of dollars on, and they haven't necessarily worked for them, and that leads to interesting journeys, and some of those journeys we like to create into a video format.
Right. Speaking of customer journeys, do you use any attribution softwares? I know that Triple Whale is particularly popular on this side of Twitter, though there's other solutions like Hyros as well as Wicked Reports, or do you guys just use good old fashioned GA?
Yeah, we are with Triple L. We have been with Hyros in the past. Big fan of Triple Whale. I think their creative cockpit has made my job about 50 times easier, which is fantastic, and gives us real feedback on a hour by hour basis. As you mentioned at the start of the pod, Sean, the creative churn, especially at our sort of like revenue levels, is quite high. We're very mindful of obviously always being as profitable as possible, and so we really want to spend efficiently, and so one of the ways that we do that is being very mindful of creative and how everything is performing. I work very closely with our ad buyer to make sure that we're turning off ads at the right time, that we're letting ads run as long as they need to. So those are Triple Wow for us is essential in our process.
Cool. So, what are your personal thoughts on the buyer quality over at TikTok? So, with TikTok blowing up recently, everyone's like, "Oh, you need to have a TikTok strategy. You need because that's where you're gonna make the most money." Cody, CMO of Jones Road Beauty, actually mentioned in a thread recently that one of his mistakes was shifting too much budget over to TikTok, as he realized that the quality of these cohorts were poor and they missed retention forecasts due to a lower LTV from users over at TikTok. So, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think Cody's observation is very accurate. I would say that it applies a little bit different to every business as well. So I think Jones Road Beauty has hit a certain level of scale. I don't know the exact revenue numbers, but they're at a point where maybe they can scale beyond Meta potentially. I mean, Cody would have to obviously speak to that to a degree, but I think for most businesses, if you're doing sub sort of $30 million in revenue, there's big potential just through Meta. I think one of the things that a lot of entrepreneurs, growth marketers in general suffer from is shiny object syndrome. I believe that TikTok has been a huge shiny object for the community, and no doubt we personally, like we as a company at HeyBud, have scaled through TikTok. Basically through the mid of last year, and we found some really interesting insights on that platform. But ultimately, I think the most important thing is to focus on one channel and do that one channel very well. And every time that we add one more thing to our plate, we get split. Our sort of like our attention gets split, and you can only split attention so much before you start to decay your return on investment.
No, that's really, really good. I want to look back into the first question a little bit because you mentioned you handled CRO, you handled landing pages. When building these landing pages, what's the thoughts that go through your head that makes a good landing page that converts well?
Yeah, I think there's three things for me. UX is a huge part of it. So that the experience, where does everything sit in the landing page? and so everything has a very coordinated fashion. It needs to make sense to a user going through that page. The next thing for me is persuasion, which is a huge part of it. And that's maybe not the most sexy word, but basically giving the customer the understanding of what may or may not work for their problem. And so, I think when I think about skincare, I think about how many people have tried 20 plus brands. And so one of the really important things for Hey Bud is we talk about our unique mechanism a lot, which is our hemp, and of course our kaolin. So it's a special combination that works together and makes us a bit unusual. So when I think about landing pages, I think about UX, I think about persuasion, and then I also place probably more of an emphasis on design and the artistic element than I think a lot of people in that space do. I know for a fact that in the beauty space, design does matter, and the aesthetic of the page really does make a big difference to conversion rate. So that can mean things like the quality of your imagery. That can mean things like the way your page moves when you go through certain sections. Is the load speed good? Is the load speed on point? Are GIFs making sense in a way so that if you didn't want to read any of the words, you could just look at some of the imagery and they could tell a tale? So I'd say for me, the landing pages really come down to three things at the end of the day. It's UX, it's persuasion, and it's design/art.
No, it's actually interesting that you bake design and art into one of the three key pillars that you're focusing on. That's a good point. Because without those features, if your beauty brand looks like shit, like excuse my French, but then nobody's gonna want to buy from it.
Absolutely. I think if we look at companies like Sephora, a large sort of focus for a lot of beauty brands would be going into a Sephora, a Mecca, an Ulta, companies like that, big establishments, and the aesthetic, especially to a customer demographic like a Gen Z, which we at HeyBud don't necessarily cater specifically to, but that customer demographic really does care not only about design and aesthetics and like just visually appealing, but they care about sustainability, and they care about the amount of effort that has gone into the brand as a whole, which makes a lot of sense. I think we as like CRO specialists and landing page specialists are very focused on optimization for sales and for AOV. But I think there is a big case to be made for the landing page acting as another touch point that leverages a long-term lifetime value for a customer. And so if you are a memorable landing page and you don't necessarily convert for the first time, that isn't always a disaster, because it can still lead to long-term successful results for your business.
Right, that's good. So I'm just gonna transition over to the building part of the podcast right now. And I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. So right here, you see a projection of my phone. All of this is going to be done within Messenger. Of course, it can be done within Instagram. But let's say you put out a post and people are unsure about what product they should be getting for their situation. So we came up with a little bit of a quiz. Can you see it fine? Or is the other words a little bit?
No, that's great.
Okay. So let's go with this. So the first question is what your skin type is, and I'm just going to go with one, normal, and then let's wait for the second question. on what your top skincare concern is, and I'm gonna pick acne. And then I'm gonna pick mm, maybe a little bit of drying. What would I consider my daily skincare routine? I'll go with basic. And then finally, it's not working, so I'm just going to translate over to Facebook here. Question 404: how important is using all natural ingredients to you? And I'm going to pick somewhat important. And then I'm going to click on get recommendations. And what it's going to do is it's going to pull a dynamic list of products that are suitable for me. So, for example, I've coded it such that it's going to pull up the daily hemp gel cleanser. Of course, it might not be 100% right, but it's going to pull up clear skin, and then it's going to pull up the clay mask with the free applicator brush. And this is the bit where you can fill in these products are great for etc etc etc, and you can check it out by tapping the button below. So this is how a typical Messenger or an Instagram funnel looks like on the front end. And this is how it's going to look like over on the back end. So the first thing that's going to happen is we have something called a starting step where people are going to be entering either a URL, they're going to be commenting on your Facebook post or your Instagram post. People can tag their friends, people tag you in their Instagram stories. Any one of these options would help this flow trigger. And this is going to be the starting message where it says, hey, but looking to make your entry into Hemp, but don't know how. Take our simple 4-question quiz and we'll give you personalized recommendations. Once they tap on let's go, this is how the flow looks like from a glance. But the first thing that we actually do is we check to see if they have filled in any of these values before. The reason why we do this is because in the event that they dropped off for whatever reason, whatever life happens, we don't want them to go through the entire quiz again. So we make sure to see if they've entered in any value for the past questions. Then we go ahead into question 1. The reason why we put question 1 of 4 here is because it helps to give the user a general idea of how long this quiz is going to take. We've seen a bump in completion rates by about 10 to 15% just by having this question number up here, and that's why we do it. We ask what's your skin type. Again, a little bit of A/B testing here, but we found that emojis work a little bit better on quick replies. And that's why it's emojis here instead of having the answers here. We go into the next conditional logic block check to see what they picked, and then we assign a custom view to whatever value they picked. So for example, if I picked 1, we know that they have skin type normal. And then of course we can make it so that if they don't respond within 5 to 15 minutes, we follow up with them. And there's actually a magic window to do this. We do once within 5 to 15 minutes and then another within an hour, and then the last one possibly within 24 hours, but we want to make it so that it's not overly jarring to the customer. So we have to balance between CRO as well as making it not annoying for the customers. So it's more or less the same steps for the next couple of questions for 2, for 2B, for 3, and then for 4. And what actually happens after is we're going to pull every single one of their answers. And then we're going to ask them if they have anything they want to change. Otherwise, we're going to get the recommendations. So of course, here you can put in a message block where you pull their email and then you connect it to Klaviyo or whatever email software that you guys are using. But here's how the next flow looks like. And I understand that this flow is going to look a little bit jarring, but I just went with the most extreme example. All of this can actually be done within Google Sheets, but if you want to do it within the bot itself, what it's going to do is we can check to see what selection the user has picked, whether it's normal, dry, oily, or combination, and then we go down this route. So I picked normal, acne, basic, as well as somewhat important, and this is how I got this result over here. Everything else is connected to a placeholder at the moment, but yep, that's basically a high level overview of how bot funnels look like on the front end and the back end.
Yeah, it looks great. I think there's lots of opportunities for customers to start to, I think, own their own narrative, and that's a with quizzes. That's an incredible way to do it. Obviously, Cody and Jones Road Beauty have had so much success with their quiz funnel, so it's really awesome to see Chatbot doing the same thing.
Yeah, definitely appreciate your time, Ben. Before we wrap up this podcast, is there anything at all you'd like to plug?
Yeah, so I also as we were sort of discussing before, I'm very much invested in landing pages, and I'm building landing pages for lots of e-com businesses, specifically in the beauty niche. So our guarantee is at Tactus, Tactus.co. Our guarantee is will increase your revenue per session by 10% or more in the first 30 days. So if that's something that interests you, obviously reach out to me, ben at tactus.co, or alternatively at BENGOGOS on Twitter as well. But if not, thanks so much for listening to the pod, and I'm looking forward to listening in future, Sean.
Cool. Thanks for your time, Ben.